If Penthouse walked first, it was only so the Glory Part 2 could run. It was only so the Glory could sprint. This is the revenge plot we both wanted, needed, and deserved. Hey, what's up you guys, and welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Bree with an E, and I upload a variety of content every week pertaining to TV shows, movies, pop culture, and controversial people and things. So if you're interested in any of that, please do me a favor and hit that subscribe button. Also, make sure to turn on post notifications so you're notified every time I post. But if you don't want to, that's cool, that's okay. Just make sure you drop by every week for new uploads. And also, please make sure to give this video a big thumbs up, as it helps so much with the algorithm and making sure people find this video as well as my channel. Obviously, you can tell by the sound of my voice, I am still a little bit stuffy from my sickness, and I'm kind of like short of breath. You know, we're working with what we have. There's also clothes in the background that I'm doing in a second, aka they'll probably be there all week. Anyways, today we are here to discuss the ending of The Glory Part 2, and oh my gosh, guys, when I tell you, like, chef's kiss, like, they literally ate that. The Glory Part 2 did a very well done job in wrapping up and concluding everything. Everything was just so well executed on every level. Every storyline got tied up so perfectly. So we're gonna recap everything that pretty much happened in The Glory Part 2. We're gonna first start off with our bullies' demises, how each and every single one, and I mean every single one of Moon Dong-eun's bullies got dealt a taste of their own medicine, got dealt with, okay? Then we're gonna also talk about how each of the victims in this storyline, Moon Dong-eun, Spy Ajima, and all others got really just the victory of all victories. So before we do that, let's kind of take a recap of everything we saw happen in part 1. So in part 1, we are introduced, of course, to our main girl, Moon Dong-eun, a high school student who gets bullied every single day by her high school bullies, Yeon, Lee Sara, Jeong, Jae-jun, and Myeong. These bullies tirelessly every single day and mercilessly bully the heck out of Moon Dong-eun, physically and emotionally abusing her and making her life a living hell. So much so that she completely drops out of school and even tries to almost take her own life. But my girl says, no, you know, I can't go out this way. I need to get my revenge. I need to get even with Yeon. Better yet, completely take her down. And that is when we see that scene in the gym where Moon Dong-eun and Yeon are face to face together, and Moon Dong-eun basically declares to Yeon she's going to ruin Yeon's life, and the rest of the others' lives as well, but mostly Yeon. So then we get a flash forward into all of our bullies' lives: Yeon, Lee Sara, Jae-jung, Jae-jun, and Myeong. We also get a quick time lapse of Moon Dong-eun from the time she dropped out of high school and then started working all these part-time jobs until her adulthood, when she went into college and then went on to teaching, basically. But every part of Moon Dong-eun's life we see is constructed to basically get revenge against Yeon. The only reason Moon Dong-eun becomes a teacher is so that she can get close to Yeon's daughter and basically start her evil revenge plot from there. So we get a glimpse into all of the bullies' lives. Yeon, she is a successful news and weather forecaster. She's married to a very rich man. She has her own daughter. She got the man, the career, and the baby. Let's revisit that later, right? Fast forward into Lee Sara's life. She is a successful artist, but has a few issues. Wait a minute. She's a drug addict, everyone. And earlier on, when she was a teenager, we were introduced to the fact that her father is a pastor or priest for a church, which really means she's going to be held to a higher standard and critiqued on a larger scale because she is the daughter of a pastor. And we will also revisit that later. We also get a glimpse into Choi Hae-jung's life, and her life, actually, since she was a teenager, she's always been on the outskirts of the duo of Lee Sara and Yeon and the others. She's always been kind of treated lesser than, and that treatment didn't actually change. As an adult, she still is kind of treated like an outsider on the outskirts of everything. So she kind of just follows the money wherever she can get it. She hangs out with them for the status and getting somewhat free clothes, I guess. She even tries to marry a rich guy, which she calls off, which we will revisit that as well. So she is really chasing this luxurious lifestyle through other people's money. And then let's get a check-in on Jae-joon. Jae-joon is of course a successful businessman. He is a owner of a prestigious, wealthy country club. We also learn that Myeong-oh is kind of working up under him, which leads us into our glimpse into Myeong-oh's life. He's working up under Jae-joon as his personal driver, as his assistant, as his little bus errand boy, you know what I'm saying? So clearly with getting a glimpse into everyone's life, we see just how much each of them have to lose. Lee Sara, Jae-joon, and Yeon are kind of on the higher tier of the list because they have a lot more to lose than Hye-jung and Myeong-oh. So we kind of see in part 1 how Moon Dong-eun uses Hye-jung and Myeong-oh to do her little dirty work, to be her inner eyes and ears of the operation, to basically get and weed information out from within the group, which is how Myeong-oh ends up in his predicament, unalived, which leads us into our first demise, Myeong-oh. Myeong-oh is taken care of. You know, Moon Dong-eun, I don't think she ever actually had it in the cards to harm Myeong-oh. Like I said, she was kind of just using him as a pawn in her game to help her get revenge, and it wasn't so much of him getting off scot-free. It's just that he didn't have much to lose, so what was the point in taking revenge on him? But in the end, he got dealt with anyways. He got his hands served back to him, which leads us into our second bully's downfall, Lee Sara. Like I said, as an adult, Lee Sara struggles with a strong drug addiction. So when Myeong-oh, who is her supplier for her drugs, disappears off the face of the earth and she cannot get in contact with him, she can't score her drugs anymore, so she literally starts to slowly lose her mind from being off the drugs, and she starts having these super terrible withdrawals. All of the group starts to notice how Lee Sara is slipping from reality. She is losing her mind. She is going through these strong withdrawals. I really see how dependent she's become on these drugs, and her family does too. So like I said, Lee Sara's father is a pastor over a church. So of course you can only imagine image and reputation are big things to a family like them. So one day she's sitting in church, she gets a text, a really strange text. These details are fuzzy because I watched this episode a minute ago, so if I say anything wrong, just correct me. But I believe she gets a text, I believe it's from Moon Dong-eun, that kind of lures her into this abandoned place within the church, and there's like a platter of like whatever drugs set up for her. I think it's cocaine or meth. I don't know my drugs. She's got her little syringe. I think it's cocaine then. No. I think it's meth then. So I think she's on meth, all right? So she's got her little syringe and she's doing her drug. She's putting it in her arm, you know. She's having a fun time. She starts tripping a little bit and then she like starts, you know, self-pleasing herself. And that is when I think Dong-eun takes a picture of it, or someone takes a picture of it, and they send it out to the rest of the church, so the church is alerted of it, and they start walking out of her father's service little by little. He's like, what's going on? They're all leaving to go see what his daughter's doing. So they go and they take their pictures, they take their videos. The whole thing goes viral. The whole situation is messy. She even actually ends up getting arrested temporarily for it. While this whole scandal with Lee Sara and what she did in the church is going around, there is another story that has come out within the group of friends about Yeon and how she was a bully in high school. Just basically this whole anonymous post subscribing to this alleged bullying. Now, Hye-jung uses these two situations to leverage one against another and stating that Yeon used Lee Sara's story to kind of bury her own story. Hye-jung uses this information to kind of plant a seed of doubt in Lee Sara's mind about Yeon and if she's really her true friend or not. But going back to Lee Sara and Hye-jung's encounter in the jail cell, there's obvious tensions brewing between the ladies in this friend group. There's jealousy, bitterness, and each one secretly wants to see the downfall of the other. So fast forwarding to Myeong-oh's eventual funeral, where they finally recover the body and are able to have some sort of service for him, we have Jae-joon, Lee Sara, and Hye-jung sitting around the table talking and discussing. I don't remember what exactly they were talking about, maybe being evil people. But somehow Lee Sara ticks off Hye-jung, which prompts her to send a very interesting video involving Lee Sara and Myeong-oh, and we all know what it was. I'm not gonna describe what it was. It was a job doing the blow, if you know what I mean. But so yes, Hye-jung actually ends up with Myeong-oh's tablet or iPad, which contains a lot of information she can utilize to her advantage. Not only does she find that recording of Yeon and Myeong-oh in his final moments, she also finds a very interesting and embarrassing video of Lee Sara with Myeong-oh and doing some deeds, doing some mind-blowing deeds. So Lee Sara, of course, ticks off Hye-jung, which prompts her to send this video of the situation happening to Jae-joon. Jae-joon shows Lee Sara and like, hey, is this you? She completely freaks out, denies it, and starts accusing Hae-jung specifically of sending the video because we of course know Myeong didn't send it himself. So they start having this aggressive yelling match, and it leads to an altercation where Lee Sara literally takes a pencil and stabs Hae-jung in the neck. And from there, she literally starts splurting blood out of her neck and out of her mouth. The whole situation was messy. The police officers walk in afterward and arrest Lee Sara. I can only imagine her reputation is just completely shot at this point. First, we have the scandal video of her doing the deed in the church, and then we have this situation where she stabs someone in the neck. It's just not looking good for her. So we as viewers can only infer that this is Lee Sara's downfall. There's no coming back from this for her. So now that is Myeong down, and now that is Lee Sara down. We now have Hae-jung. Hae-jung, after she gets stabbed in the neck, she's sent to the hospital. She wakes up and she's pretty much told she may never be able to speak again with her voice because where she was stabbed was like right in her vocal cord. So she does not have the ability to like produce sound anymore. Like she can like utter out phrases and words, but it's just very airy and raspy. It reminds me of those smoker commercials when they have really bad lungs and so they have to get on that machine where the machine talks for them. That's what her voice sounds like. So now, not only has she lost the ability to coherently speak, when Jae-joon comes to visit her, he also abandons her. He leaves her in the hospital and goes back home and says, hey, actually, you know what, you can come and grab your stuff because this isn't happening anymore. And I think the only reason Jae-joon and Hae-jung actually were going to get married was kind of to spite Yeonjin, because prior to Jae-joon and Hae-jung getting together, Yeonjin and Jae-joon had a conversation where he basically poured his heart out to her and said he wanted to be a family with her, with Yeol and Yeonjin, but Yeonjin did not express the same. She wanted to keep her family together with her husband and Yeol and not Jae-joon. I think it's safe to say their getting together was only to spite Yeonjin. But so yes, he completely abandons her in the hospital and leaves her to fend for herself. She's alone during recovery and pretty much has lost the life she's been yearning for, this life of luxuriousness, and she could have had that if she didn't leave her other man for Jae-joon, because she called off her other engagement to be with Jae-joon. She could have had some money at the moment, but now she's literally with nothing, has no friends, no support, and is just kind of left to fend for herself. So now, as it stands, we have now seen the downfall and demise of Myeong, Lee Sara, and Hae-jung, which leads us into Jae-joon's demise. Now, after Jae-joon completely abandons Hae-jung in the hospital, she gets a visit from Dong-eun and is basically handed revenge on a gold platter, if you will. Dong-eun basically hints to her that she should basically poison Jae-joon by swapping his eye drop medication with this chemical concoction that is bound to make him not see at all. So when Hae-jung comes to pick up her stuff like Jae-joon suggests, she sneaks into his bathroom and does just what Dong-eun tells her to. She swaps out the eye drop medication and replaces it with the chemical concoction, and Jae-joon uses it while he's driving one night, completely blurring his vision. A truck comes and hits him because he stopped in the middle of an intersection. We see a clip of him completely wigging out. He's lost his eyesight completely. It's just dark. He's moving around, shuffling. And the more he's shuffling back, he's getting closer to the edge of a cliff, and he hears some footsteps approaching him. We then see what we can all infer to be Yeonjin's husband push Jae-joon off the edge of the cliff. And I feel like we know it's Yeonjin's ex-husband, because of the tie he's wearing. He was always seen in the show in business suits and business attire. He wasn't really wearing normal clothing because he's that man. And I'm digressing a little bit in stating this, but I just was completely pleasantly surprised at how Yeonjin's husband, I can't remember his name, guys, but I'm just completely surprised at his turnaround. He wasn't so sure of Dong-eun and Yeonjin's past, and so he was just kind of sticking by his wife. But as more and more details came out about how horrible, truly horrible Yeonjin is of a person and all that she did in her past, as all of that was exposed, we saw him step further and further away from him and threatening divorce and custody of Yeol. And I'm just actually pleasantly surprised that he didn't help her in getting away with murder. But going back to Jae-joon, Jaejoon is pushed off the edge of a cliff into, I think, what is some construction type material. It seemed like some construction substance, like, I don't know, some tar. He basically drowns to death. He can't get back up to the top because it's just so heavy, the substance weighing on him, which now means 4 of the 5 bully group of friends have now come to their downfall and demise. And of course, we have to save Yeonjin's downfall and demise for last. Hers was the most felt. Oh my gosh. They did so well with this. I love how we saw Yeonjin stripped of every single thing she loved and cared for. In part 2, we see as Yeonjin becomes more and more panicked, frantic, and worried about people finding out that she murdered Myeong. This is when we find out the relationship between her mom and her isn't so much unconditional. It's very conditional, in fact. We saw how Yeonjin pushed So-e, I believe was her name, off the edge of that abandoned building. So her mother hires what I believe was a former police detective or someone who was currently working in the police department to take from the evidence collection Yeonjin's name tag, which was found at the scene. This name tag is then gifted to Yeonjin's mother to store up and lock away for the next 20 years or so. But in part 2, however, as Yeonjin's mother is put under pressure and threatened to be reported basically to the police for aiding and stealing, hiding and tampering evidence basically in a murder investigation, we see Yeonjin's mother betray her because she'd rather it be her daughter than her go to jail, or her daughter versus both of them, which is Yeonjin's first betrayal and loss, that her mother never actually loved her. Now around this time as well, Yeonjin's husband wants a divorce. He's seen all that he needs to see. He's truly witnessed Yeonjin's terrible, ruthless, and disgusting attitude and behavior. And so while news of their divorce goes public in an article, Yeonjin shows up to work that day. She sees everyone staring at her, and she figures it's just because of the news about her and her husband getting divorced. However, she soon realizes the reason they're staring at her is not because of the news of her divorce, but because of the latest post and video of her exposing her for being a bully and having this disgusting attitude and behavior in high school. With this hard evidence basically proving that Yeonjin was a terrible bully and horrible person in high school, she completely decides to resign. She hands in her letter of resignation right there on the spot. And she's lost the relationship she thought she had with her mother. She's losing her husband, and now she's losing her perfect career. All this evidence pointing Yeonjin as the murderer of Myeong. He's under extreme and copious amounts of pressure and has fallen under paranoia, which leads her to the shop one night where she is eventually arrested on site. After Yeonjin is arrested, she officially signs off on the divorce. She also gets a visit from Moon Dong-eun, and this was probably one of my favorite parts of Yeonjin's demise, was this moment Dong-eun got to have with Yeonjin face to face, showing Dong-eun was victorious in the end. She completely saw Yeonjin at her worst after she was stripped of everything she loved. She knew there was no escaping the situation. She knew she had nothing. She had lost everything she cared about, and thus declaring Moon Dong-eun victorious. So with Yeonjin's demise, that finally completes all 5 of the friend group's downfall. Every single person got dealt their own karma in their own way, and I completely loved how there was just no sparing, because we've seen how other revenge plots in the past, Penthouse, I'm definitely calling you out, did not do the bad people in the story full justice. They did not completely get what they deserved. And the thing about Dong-eun's whole plot of revenge, she didn't necessarily have to do the dirty work herself. All she really had to do was plant those little seeds of doubt within the friend group, which caused them to bicker back and forth and trade on one another. She didn't really have to do much except show up and threaten them. Each of them had a hand in each other's demise. So now that we've discussed each of the bullies' downfall and demise, we're going to discuss now the victors in the story and how they got the redemption and revenge they deserved. Now, obviously, it's fitting we start with Dong-eun first. This whole story was about Dong-eun getting revenge on her high school bullies, and she did just that. But Dong-eun's victory comes from more than just getting her revenge on Yeonjin. Actually, we see her grow and evolve throughout part 2, especially. Now, she starts to let go of that pain and that trauma Yeonjin and her group of friends caused her in high school. We see her physically and emotionally remove herself from that hallway she was left in. And I truly think that that was her victory. Not so much getting revenge, but finally learning to let go of the trauma and the pain they caused her and be able to actually finally live her life. Then in doing so, she was also open to opening up her heart and possibility of being loved and loving someone else. Now in Dong Eun's revenge, she obviously had help along the way. Not only did she have her man, she had our spy Ajima. So with spy Ajima, it's no secret that she's been being abused, brutally abused and attacked by her husband, and her daughter has had to suffer at the expense of that as well. So her entire mission in helping Dong Eun get her revenge was to then for Dong Eun to help her get her revenge against her husband, thus eliminating him, we'll say. So in part 2, I'm not gonna lie, it was taking so long for them to unalive Mr. Man, but finally it happened. He got hit by a car. It was instant death. A part of the reason why I get so attached to these shows is because I really want the best for the people who've been done wrong, and I want the worst, the absolute worst, for the people who have done the wrongdoings. So to see that he was taken out by a car accident of all things, sure, he's like been unalived, but the way he was unalived wasn't quite fulfilling. It didn't meet my standards of unalivement, but nonetheless, he's gone out of Ajima's life. She is now free, and her daughter is unfortunately now not with her, but is living a safe, normal life, studying abroad and having better normal experiences as a teenager. So I was very happy to see Spy Ajima's victory in that she finally found happiness away from her abusive husband. She sent her daughter away, unfortunately, but her daughter is now safe, like I said. She's able to recreate a life for herself and start anew and finally wear that beautiful red lipstick that Dong Eun got her. The last person I want to discuss that got their victory, their happy ending they so very well deserved, was Yeonjun's ex-husband. Like I said, I was pleasantly surprised that Yeonjun's husband actually was not a terrible person, and that he too wanted to hold Yeonjun accountable for the bad things she's done, and actually became more and more appalled and detached from her at the discovery of just how much of an evil and wicked person she was and continued to be throughout her life. So I was so happy to see that he got a divorce from her after he finally saw her true colors, and he was also able to claim Yeso and flee the country to UK, which I'm so happy for him and Yeso, because we know, especially throughout part 2, how Jaejun was becoming increasingly more attached and possessive over Yeso, so much to the fact that he was threatening to take custody of her and all of these terrible, horrible things. So to see him outsmart him, outplay him, even take his life and create a new life for him and Yeso away from all this mess and start anew in UK, I was just so happy to see that. But I was extremely happy with the ending of part 2, the ending and conclusion of The Glory as a whole. It was just so well done. So that completes our discussion on The Glory part 1 and part 2 and the crazy jam-packed, very, very satisfying ending that part 2 was. But let me know your thoughts on the series. Do you feel like everyone truly got what they deserved in the end?